The galaxy moved on from this ship, but it stayed true to its mission. The old ship floated quietly in the empty darkness of space. Its metal skin was dull and worn from years of travel among the stars. Paint peeled in places, showing the gray metal underneath. Small lights still blinked along its sides, proof that life remained inside. The USS Endurance was once the pride of the human fleet. 40 years ago, it was new, fast, and full of the best technology. Now, newer and better ships had taken its place. The Endurance was scheduled to be taken apart soon, its useful parts saved and the rest melted down. Commander Alan Wright stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. He was an older man with short gray hair and lines on his face from years of making tough choices. His blue uniform still fit well, but it was not as crisp as it once was. "Commander, incoming message from Earth Command," said Officer Linda Bell. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, which was an older model that used buttons instead of the new touch screens. "Put it on screen," Wright said, standing straighter. The large screen at the front of the bridge flickered to life. Admiral Jack Peterson's face appeared. He had been Wright's friend for many years, but today his face was serious. "Alan, I have news," the Admiral said. "The orders are final. After this mission, the Endurance will return to Earth for decommissioning. The crew will be reassigned to newer vessels." Wright nodded slowly. He had expected this news, but hearing it still hurt. "Understood, sir. I fought for you, Alan. I told them the Endurance still had value, but the budget people won. New ships cost less to run and can do more." "What about our final mission, sir?" Wright asked. "A simple supply run to Mars colony, then home. The brass, want to give the old girl an easy final job?" Wright looked around the bridge at his crew. Most had served with him for years. Officer Bell at Communications had been with him for 15 years. Navigator Frank Johnson for 12. Engineer Sam Miller had been keeping the engines running for almost 20 years. They were all the best at their jobs, even if they weren't using the newest equipment. "We'll make it a good last run, sir," Wright said. After the call ended, the bridge was quiet. Everyone had heard the news. Wright cleared his throat. "Well, you all heard. Let's make this last mission perfect. The Endurance may be old, but she's still one of the best ships in space." The crew got back to work, but there was sadness in the air. The ship had been their home for years. Now they would be split up, sent to different ships across the fleet. 2 days later, the Endurance left Earth orbit. Its engines glowed blue against the blackness of space as it moved away from the bright blue planet. Inside, the crew went about their jobs, checking systems and keeping everything running smoothly. Wright sat in his command chair, reading reports on a tablet. The ship was in good shape for its age. Engineer Miller had kept the engines working better than anyone thought possible for such an old ship. Officer Bell spoke up from her station. "Commander, we're getting a strange signal. It's weak, but it's not a normal communication pattern." Wright looked up from his tablet. "Source? It seems to be coming from near Mars colony, sir, but not from the colony itself." This was odd. Mars colony was the biggest human settlement off Earth. Over 10,000 people lived there now, but there were no other official settlements or stations nearby. "Is it a distress call?" Wright asked. Bell shook her head. "No, sir. It's just strange. I've never heard anything like it before." Wright stood up and walked to her station. "Let me hear it." Bell pressed a button, and a sound came through the speakers. It was a series of beeps and clicks, not random, but following, some pattern that Wright couldn't understand. It didn't sound like any human communication he knew. "Have the computer analyze it," Wright ordered. Bell typed commands into her console. After a minute, the computer responded. "Unknown language pattern. Not matching any known human or alien communication systems." Wright frowned. This was strange. There were only 3 known alien species that humans had contact with, and all used communication systems that human computers could recognize even if they couldn't always translate them perfectly. "Keep monitoring it," Wright said. "Let me know if anything changes." Wright returned to his chair, thinking. Their orders were simple. deliver supplies to Mars colony and return to Earth. But this strange signal was coming from near their destination. Should they investigate? Technically, it wasn't part of their mission, but Wright had always believed in being thorough. "Navigator, what's our ETA to Mars?" Wright asked. Johnson checked his screen. 18 hours at current speed, sir." Wright nodded. "Good. We'll deliver the supplies as planned. Then we'll check out the source of that signal before we head back to Earth." Bell looked up from her station. "Sir, the signal just got stronger, and it changed." "Let me hear it," Wright said. The new sound was different. It had a rhythm to it now, almost like music, but with harsh notes that didn't sound pleasant to human ears. "It's beautiful," Bell said, surprising Wright. "Beautiful? It sounds awful to me," Wright replied. Bell shook her head as if waking from a dream. "I don't know why I said that. It does sound strange." Wright felt uneasy. "Officer Bell, have Dr. Ross check you out in the medical bay. Johnson, take over communications for now." Bell looked confused but nodded. "Yes, sir." She got up and left the bridge. Wright watched her go, concerned. Bell was one of his most reliable officers. It wasn't like her to say something so odd. "Commander," Johnson said after taking over Bell's station, "the signal is getting even stronger, and I'm picking up something else now. A small object moving near Mars. It's not on any of the registered flight paths." Wright leaned forward in his chair. What had started as a simple supply run was becoming more complicated, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. "Yellow alert," Wright ordered. "I want all systems checked and ready. Whatever's out there, the Endurance is going to be prepared." The yellow alert lights began to flash, and the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Despite its age, the ship responded well, proving that old didn't always mean useless. As they continued toward Mars, Wright stared at the view screen showing the red planet growing larger. Their simple final mission had just become much more interesting, and potentially dangerous. The galaxy moved on from the ship, but it stayed true to its mission. The USS Endurance continued toward Mars, the strange signal growing stronger. Commander Wright sat in his chair, worried about Officer Bell. She had been gone for 30 minutes. Now, he pressed a button on his chair. "Medical Bay, this is the commander. How is Officer Bell?" Dr. Ross's voice came through. "She's resting now, sir. Her brainwaves showed unusual patterns when she heard that signal. It's like it affected her somehow. I gave her something to help her sleep." This was troubling news. Wright looked at the red planet growing larger on the screen. "Keep me updated, Doctor. Bridge out." Navigator Johnson spoke up from the communications station. "Sir, Mars Colony is hailing us." "Put them through," Wright ordered. The screen changed to show a woman with short black hair. She wore the blue and gray uniform of the Mars Colony leadership. "Commander Wright, this is Director Carol Green of Mars Colony. We've been expecting you." Wright nodded. "Director Green, we're on schedule to arrive in 16 hours with your supplies." Green frowned. "We appreciate that, Commander, but we have a situation." "Have you detected any unusual signals in this area?" Wright sat up straighter. "Yes, we have. We picked up a strange communication pattern about an hour ago, not like anything we've heard before." Green's face showed relief. "So we're not the only ones. We've been hearing it for 3 days now. At first it was very weak, but it's getting stronger, and we've had effects." "Effects?" Wright asked, thinking of Bell. 5 of our people have fallen into comas after monitoring the signal for too long. Our doctor says their brain patterns are all wrong. They're alive, but we can't wake them up." This was much worse than what happened to Bell. Wright made a quick decision. "We'll increase speed, Director. We should be there in 10 hours. "Thank you, Commander. And there's something else." Green lowered her voice. "We've spotted something out there. A ship, we think. But it's not one of ours. It's just sitting out there, about 1,000 miles from the colony." Wright's heart beat faster. An unknown ship was a rare thing. Since humans began exploring space 50 years ago, They had only met 3 alien species. All 3 were now friendly trading partners. But the galaxy was vast, and there could be many other species out there. Have you tried communicating with it? Wright asked. Yes, using all standard greeting protocols. No response except for that strange signal. Wright nodded. We'll check it out after we deliver your supplies. The Endurance might be old, but she still has teeth. Green looked grateful. Thank you, Commander. Mars colony out. The screen went back to showing the view of space and Mars. Wright stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Listen up, everyone. Change of plans. We're increasing speed to reach Mars colony in 10 hours. And it seems we're not just dealing with a strange signal. There may be an unknown ship out there. The bridge crew looked at each other, a mix of excitement and worry on their faces. Engineer Miller spoke through the comm system. Commander, I can push the engines to get us there in 8 hours, but it won't be comfortable. The old girl will shake a bit. Do it, Miller, and I want all weapons. Systems checked, just in case. Aye, sir. Weapons haven't been fired in years, but they should work fine. Wright turned to Johnson. Set course directly to Mars colony. Maximum safe speed. Course set, sir. 8 hours to arrival. The Endurance's engines glowed brighter as the ship picked up speed. The metal hull creaked and vibrated, showing its age but holding together. Wright sat back in his chair thinking about what might be waiting for them. 6 hours later, Wright stood in the medical bay looking at Officer Bell. She was asleep, but not peacefully. Her eyes moved rapidly under her closed eyelids, and her fingers twitched. She keeps mumbling words I don't understand, Dr. Ross said, standing next to Wright. Something about the way and joining. It doesn't make sense. Wright frowned. And you're sure it's connected to the signal? Yes. Her brain activity changed the moment she heard it. It's like the sound rewired something in her mind. This was beyond Wright's experience. In his 40 years in space, he had seen strange things, but nothing like this. Keep her sedated for now, Wright ordered. We can't risk having her wake up until we understand what's happening. Wright left the medical bay and headed back to the bridge. The ship was still shaking from the strain of high-speed travel, but they were getting close to Mars now. Back on the bridge, the crew was busy monitoring systems and watching for any sign of the unknown ship. There it is, Commander, said Officer Dan White, who had taken over for Johnson at navigation. He pointed to a small dot on the screen, near the red curve of Mars. Wright leaned forward. Magnify. The image zoomed in, showing a ship unlike any Wright had seen before. It was smooth and oval-shaped, with no visible engines or weapons. Its surface looked almost like glass, reflecting the light from the distant sun. Size? Wright asked. About half the size of the Endurance, sir, White replied. No energy readings. We can detect. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was dead in space. But Wright knew it wasn't dead, not if it was sending that signal. Keep our distance for now. I want to deliver the supplies to Mars colony first, then we'll investigate. Sir, said the new communications officer, Greg Lee. The signal is changing again. It's pulsing now. As if on cue, the ship began to shake more violently. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. Engineer Miller's voice came through the comm, sounding worried. Commander, we've got problems. All systems are fluctuating. It's like something is interfering with our power grid. Wright looked at the alien ship on the screen. Is it them? Are they doing this to us? I don't know, sir, Miller replied. But whatever it is, the old systems can't handle it. We need to reduce speed now, or we risk a core breach. Wright made a quick decision. Reduce speed to minimum. All non-essential systems offline. Divert power to shields and life support. The ship's shaking lessened as it slowed down. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was redirected. Sir, White said, pointing at the screen. The alien ship is moving. It's coming toward us. Wright watched as the smooth, oval craft slowly turned and began moving in their direction. Despite everything, he felt a flash of pride. The galaxy might have moved on from the Endurance, thinking it too old and outdated. But now this old ship and its experienced crew might be all that stood between humanity and a new unknown threat. Battle stations, Wright ordered, his voice calm and determined. Let's show them what this old ship can do. The galaxy moved on from this ship, but it stayed true to its mission. Red lights flashed across the bridge of the USS Endurance as the crew rushed to their battle stations. The old ship hummed with energy as dormant systems came online for the first time in years. Weapons status, Commander Wright ordered, his eyes fixed on the approaching alien vessel. All weapons online, sir, replied Security Officer Jane Wilson. But power levels are fluctuating. We might not get full strength. Wright nodded. The Endurance was an old ship, but it had been built during a time when humans were still new to space travel and had designed their ships to be sturdy. The weapons might not be the newest, but they would work. Open a channel, Wright said to Communications Officer Greg Lee. All frequencies. Lee pressed several buttons. Channel open, sir. Wright stood up straight. Unknown vessel, this is Commander Alan Wright of the Earthship USS Endurance. Your actions are causing harm to humans on Mars colony. Please respond and state your intentions. They waited, but there was only silence. No response, sir, Lee said. The alien ship continued to approach, now only 5 miles away and still coming closer. It's increasing speed, Navigator Dan White reported. Impact with us in 2 minutes at current course. Wright had to make a choice. Fire on an unknown ship that had not directly attacked them, or wait and risk being hit. Fire a warning shot, Wright ordered. Across their bow, Wilson pressed the firing controls. A beam of blue energy shot from the Endurance, passing just in front of the alien ship. The beam missed by only a few feet, exactly as planned. The alien ship stopped moving. They've halted, sir, White said, sounding relieved. But the relief was short-lived. The strange signal suddenly grew much louder, filling the bridge with its odd rhythm. Cut that sound, Wright shouted over the noise. Lee tried to turn it off, but shook his head. I can't, sir. It's coming through all systems now. Several crew members put their hands over their ears, trying to block out the sound. Wright felt a strange pressure building in his head, like something was trying to push its way into his mind. Engineering, Wright called into the comm. Miller, can you block the signal? There was no answer. Miller, report. Wright tried again. Engineer. Sam Miller's voice finally came through, but he sounded strange. His words were slow and slurred. They want to help us. We should let them come aboard. Wright frowned. Miller was one of the most level-headed people he knew. Something was very wrong. Medical team to engineering, Wright ordered. Miller needs help. The signal continued to pulse through the ship. Wright noticed that younger crew members seemed to be affected more quickly. Officer Wilson, who was only 25, was now staring blankly at her console, not responding to questions. Wright, at 58, felt the pressure in his head but could still think clearly. Maybe older minds were harder to influence? Everyone over 40 report, Wright called out. 5 crew members responded. The rest were either not on the bridge or not responding. Listen to me, Wright said to those still aware. Something in that signal is affecting our minds. We need to shut down all communication systems. But sir, Lee said, that would cut us off from Mars colony. Better cut off than controlled, Wright replied. Do it now. Lee nodded and began the shutdown procedure. The lights on the bridge dimmed even further as more systems went offline. The strange sound finally faded. Wright looked at the screen. The alien ship was still there, not moving. But now smaller objects were emerging from it. Magnify those objects, Wright ordered. The screen zoomed in to show small, round devices leaving the alien ship. There were dozens of them, each about the size of a basketball. They're heading for Mars colony, White said, checking his screens. And more are coming this way. Wright made a quick decision. Everyone affected by the signal, get them to the medical bay. Lee, send a warning to Mars colony about those devices, then complete the communications shutdown. White set a course directly between those devices and Mars. The crew moved quickly, carrying the unresponsive crew members off the bridge. Lee sent the warning message, then shut down all external communications. Course set, sir, White said. The Endurance is Now between those devices and Mars colony, Wright nodded. Full power to forward shields. The ship moved into position, its old engines straining but working. On the screen, Wright could see the small devices changing course, now heading directly for the Endurance. They want to get past us to reach Mars, Wright said. We can't let that happen. The first of the small devices hit the Endurance's shields. There was a flash of light and the ship shook slightly. More hits followed, each one making the ship tremble. Shields holding at 85%, Wright reported, but they're dropping with each hit. Wright watched as more and more of the devices slammed into their shields. Fire at the devices. Try to destroy them before they hit us. Wilson, who had recovered somewhat after the signal stopped, began firing the ship's weapons. Blue beams shot out, hitting some of the devices, which exploded in small flashes of light. But there were too many to hit them all. Shields down to 60%, Wright said, his voice tense. We can't take much more of this. Wright looked at the alien ship still sitting quietly while its smaller devices did the attacking. Change target. Fire on the main ship. Wilson redirected the weapons. The blue beams struck the alien vessel but seemed to do no damage. Its smooth surface absorbed or reflected the energy. No effect, sir, Wilson said. The Endurance shook violently as more devices hit the shields. Shields at 40%, Wright reported. Critical failure imminent, Wright thought quickly. The Endurance couldn't destroy the alien ship, and the shields wouldn't last much longer against these attacks. But they couldn't let these devices reach Mars colony. There had to be a way to use the old ship's strengths. Then he had an idea. Engineering, Wright called through the comm. Is anyone there? A new voice responded. Assistant Engineer Ben Kelly. Here, sir. Miller is sedated in the medical bay. Kelly, I need you to prepare the cargo bay doors for emergency opening, and I need all power diverted to the magnetic loading system. There was a pause. Sir, that system is for pulling cargo containers into the bay. It's not designed for... I know what it's designed for, Kelly. Just do it. Yes, sir. It will take a few minutes. Wright turned to Wright. Set a course that brings us close to as many of those devices as possible. We're going fishing. Wright looked confused for a moment, then understood. Course set, sir. The Endurance moved forward, its shields, still taking hits but now moving directly toward the swarm of alien devices. As they got closer, Wright gave his next order. Open cargo bay doors. Activate magnetic loading system at maximum power. The large doors on the underside of the ship opened, exposing the cargo bay to space. The powerful magnets, designed to pull, in heavy metal cargo containers activated with a surge of energy that made the lights on the bridge flicker. The effect was immediate. Dozens of the small devices were pulled off course, drawn toward the Endurance's open cargo bay by the powerful magnetic field. It's working, Wright exclaimed. They must have metal components. Wright allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes old technology had advantages. New ships had tractor beams that used focused energy, but the Endurance's simple but powerful electromagnets were pulling in the alien devices by the dozen. Once we've caught enough of them, close the bay doors and cut power to the magnets, Wright ordered. Then get us out of here at maximum speed. The plan was working. But Wright knew they weren't safe yet. The main alien ship was still out there, and they still didn't know its true capabilities or intentions. The galaxy moved on from this ship, but it stayed true to its mission. The cargo bay doors of the USS Endurance closed with a heavy thud that echoed through the ship. Inside the bay, dozens of the small alien devices lay motionless on the floor, their strange powers seemingly disabled once they were cut off from the main ship. Cargo bay secured, Assistant Engineer Ben Kelly reported from engineering. We've captured about 30 of those devices. Commander Wright nodded with satisfaction. Good work. Now get us to Mars colony, maximum safe speed. The Endurance turned and moved toward the red planet, leaving the alien ship behind. Wright watched the main view screen closely, expecting the alien vessel to follow them. But it remained in place, not moving. Strange, Wright said. Why aren't they coming after us? Maybe they didn't expect us to fight back, Navigator Wright suggested. Wright wasn't sure. Something about this situation felt wrong. The alien ship could have attacked more directly if it wanted to destroy them. "I'm going to the cargo bay to look at those devices," Wright said. "Officer Wilson, you're with me. White, you have the bridge." Wright and Security Officer Jane Wilson took the elevator down to the cargo bay level. Dr. Ross met them at the entrance. "I came as soon as I heard we captured some of these things," the doctor said. "I want to see if they're connected to what's happening to our crew." Wright nodded. "Let's find out." They entered the cargo bay, a large room normally used for carrying supplies. Now it held dozens of round metallic objects scattered across the floor. Each was about the size of a basketball, with a smooth silver surface and no obvious openings or controls. "Careful," Wright warned as they approached. "We don't know what they can do." Officer Wilson scanned one of the devices with a handheld tool. "No energy readings, sir. They seem to be inactive." Dr. Ross knelt beside one, careful not to touch it. "The surface looks almost like mercury, but solid. I've never seen a material quite like this." Wright looked around at the scattered devices. Why would they send these to Mars' colony? And why try to affect our minds with that signal? Before anyone could answer, Engineer Kelly's voice came through the comm system. "Commander, we have a problem. The alien ship has disappeared from our sensors." Wright frowned. "Did it leave the area?" "No, sir, it just vanished, and now we're picking up a new signal coming from inside our ship." Wright looked at the alien devices with sudden understanding. "It's coming from these. They're not weapons. They're transmitters of some kind." As if responding to his words, all the devices began to glow with a soft blue light. The strange signal returned, but it sounded different now, clearer, almost like it had words hidden in the sounds. "Get back," Wright ordered, moving toward the door. "Close the cargo bay and seal it." They hurried out of the room, and Wilson hit the emergency lock button. Heavy doors slid shut, sealing the cargo bay. "Bridge, this is Wright. I want that bay depressurized. Send those devices into space." "Yes, sir," White responded. There was a distant rumble as the air was sucked out of the cargo bay, then a louder sound as the outer doors opened, exposing the room to the vacuum of space. The alien devices should have been pulled out into space. "Devices ejected, sir," White reported. "But that's strange." "What is it?" Wright asked. "The signal is still coming from inside the ship, and it's getting stronger." Wright felt a chill run down his back. "Check the cargo bay cameras. Are all the devices gone?" There was a pause. Then White's voice returned, sounding worried. "The cameras show the bay is empty, sir, but the signal is definitely still on board." Wright turned to Dr. Ross. "How are the affected crew members doing?" "Still unconscious but stable," Ross replied. "The sedation is keeping them under, but I don't know what will happen when they wake up." Wright made a decision. "We need to get to Mars colony as fast as possible. They have better medical facilities there, and maybe they've learned more about what's happening." The three of them headed back to the bridge. When they arrived, Wright could see Mars filling the main view screen. The red planet looked peaceful, but he knew that people there were suffering from the same condition affecting his crew. "ETA to Mars colony?" Wright asked. 20 minutes, sir," White replied. Wright nodded. "Hail the colony. Let them know we're coming in, and that we have affected crew members who need medical attention." Communications Officer Lee shook his head. "Sir, I can't reach them. There's some kind of interference blocking all signals to and from the colony." This was bad news. Wright looked at the readouts showing Mars colony's location. Everything looked normal from the outside. The dome structures were intact and the landing pads were clear. "We'll have to go in anyway," Wright decided. "Prepare for landing." As the Endurance began its descent toward Mars, Wright felt the ship shudder slightly. The old engines were working hard but holding steady. "Sir," Wilson called from her security station. "I'm detecting movement on the surface near the colony." "Lots of movement." Wright looked at the enhanced image on the screen. Dozens of small shapes were moving around outside the colony dome. They looked like people in spacesuits, but they were moving in strange, coordinated patterns. "Those are colonists," Dr. Ross said, looking at the screen. But why are they outside in such numbers and moving like that? As they got closer, they could see that the colonists were arranged in a large circle around something on the ground. They seemed to be building something. Magnify that central area, Wright ordered. The image zoomed in to show a structure taking shape in the middle of the circle of people. It looked similar to the alien ship they had encountered in space. The same smooth oval design. They're building another ship, Wright said, his voice low with shock. Or some kind of beacon. Officer Wilson looked up from her console with alarm. Sir, I've located the source of the signal inside our ship. It's coming from our crew members, the ones who were affected. Wright turned to Dr. Ross. Is that possible? Could those devices have somehow put something inside our people? Ross looked troubled. Maybe not something physical, but if the signal somehow reprogrammed their brains, made them receivers. The implications were terrifying. If the affected colonists and crew members were now part of some alien network, controlled or influenced by the strange signal, what was the purpose? What were they being made to do? Wright had to make the hardest decision of his career. Land at Mars colony and risk having more of his crew affected, or stay away and abandon the colonists to whatever was happening to them? The Endurance continued its approach to Mars, the old ship flying true despite the danger. Wright looked at his remaining crew, people he had served with for years. They were worried but determined. We have a duty to those colonists, Wright said firmly, and to our affected crew members. We won't abandon either. The Endurance was built to protect Earth and its colonies, and that's exactly what we're going to do. He turned to Engineer Kelly, who had come up to the bridge. Kelly, I need you to find a way to block that signal completely. Use the ship's hull as a shield if you have to. Yes, sir, Kelly replied. I might be able to reverse our communication. Array, turn it into a jamming device. Do it, Wright ordered. Then he turned to Wilson. Prepare a landing party, full protective gear, and no one under 40 years old. The older crew members seem more resistant to the signal's effects. As Mars grew larger in the view screen, Wright felt the weight of command more heavily than ever before. The Endurance might be old, but right now it was the only hope for the people of Mars colony. And it would not fail its mission. The galaxy moved on from this ship, but it stayed true to its mission. The USS Endurance hovered above the Mars colony landing pad. Commander Wright stood on the bridge, watching the strange scene below. Colonists in spacesuits continued working, on the oval structure ignoring the ship above them. No response to our hails, Communications Officer Lee reported. They're completely focused on building that thing. Wright turned to Engineer Kelly. Is the signal jammer ready? Kelly nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. Yes, sir. I've reversed our communication array. It should block the alien signal, within a half-mile radius. But there's a problem. It will use almost all our remaining power. Once we activate it, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before the ship goes dark. Wright considered this news. 10 minutes wasn't much time, but it might be enough. Dr. Ross, what's your theory about the affected people? Wright asked. I believe the signal has reprogrammed their brains somehow, Ross explained. If we block the signal, they might return to normal, or they might just become unconscious. I can't be sure. Wright made his decision. We'll land and activate the jammer. Wilson, you'll lead a team of our older crew members to find Director Green. She might know more about what's happening. Kelly, you'll try to examine that structure they're building. I'll stay on the ship to coordinate. Everyone nodded, understanding their roles. Let's do this, Wright said. Take us down. The Endurance descended slowly, landing on the pad with a gentle bump. Through the view screen, they could see the colonists continuing their work, not even looking at the ship. Activate the jammer, Wright ordered. Kelly pressed a series of buttons on his console. The ship hummed loudly as the communication array reversed its function, sending out waves that would block the alien signal. The effect was immediate. The colonists in spacesuits stopped moving. Some fell to their knees. Others simply stood still, like puppets with cut strings. It's working, White said, watching the scene. Landing party, move out, Wright ordered. Remember, you have less than 10 minutes. Wilson led a team of 5 crew members out of the ship. They wore spacesuits and carried medical kits and tools. Kelly went with them, carrying equipment to examine the alien structure. Wright watched from the bridge as they moved across the Martian surface toward the frozen colonists. The ship's power was already starting to fade, with non-essential systems shutting down to conserve energy. "Sir," Lee called from his station. "Our affected crew members are waking up. Dr. Stewart reports they seem normal but confused." This was good news. If blocking the signal freed the people from its control, there was hope for the colonists too. Outside, Wilson's team reached the first group of colonists. They checked their vital signs and helped them to their feet. Many seemed confused, looking around as if waking from a dream. Kelly had reached the oval structure and was scanning it with his tools. He spoke through the comm system, his voice excited. "Commander, this is amazing. This structure is some kind of communication device, much more powerful than the small ones we found. It's designed to send a signal all the way to... I'm not sure where, but definitely outside our solar system." "What kind of signal?" Wright asked. "Based on these readings, it would contain information. Detailed information about humans, our biology, our technology. Everything the alien ship could learn. From influencing these people." Wright felt a chill despite the ship's rising temperature as systems failed. "They're collecting intelligence. This could be the first step of an invasion." Wilson's voice came through, sounding urgent. "Sir, we found Director Green. She's awake and says there's a central control device in the middle of the structure. If we destroy it, the whole thing should be disabled." "Do it," Wright ordered. On the surface, Wilson and Green moved to the center of the oval structure. There, embedded in the ground, was a device similar to the ones they had captured on the Endurance, but larger. "We need to smash it," Green said, her voice weak but determined. Kelly scanned it quickly. "Wait, it has a power source that might explode if damaged. Let me try to disable it first." As Kelly worked, the Endurance's power continued to drop. The lights on the bridge were now dim, and many systems were offline. 2 minutes of power left, White reported. Wright watched tensely as Kelly worked on the device. If the jammer failed before they disabled the control unit, everyone would fall under the alien influence again. "Got it," Kelly finally called. "The power source is disconnected. We can destroy it safely now." Wilson used a heavy tool to smash the control device. It broke apart, revealing complex alien technology inside. The entire oval structure around them began to crumble, falling into pieces on the Martian soil. At that moment, the Endurance's power reached critical levels. The jammer failed, and the bridge went dark. Emergency lights came on, casting a red glow over everything. "Power failure," White said. "Jammer is offline." Wright held his breath, watching the scene outside. Would the colonists and his crew be taken over again? But nothing happened. The colonists continued to move normally, helping each other back toward the safety of their dome. The landing party gathered samples of the alien technology and began returning to the ship. 20 minutes later, the landing party had returned, bringing Director Green with them. In the Endurance's conference room, now lit by emergency lighting, they discussed what had happened. "The last thing I remember clearly was hearing that strange signal," Green said. "Then it's like I was dreaming, watching myself help build that thing." "We think it was a reconnaissance mission," Wright explained. "The aliens were using humans to gather information and build a transmitter to send that information back to them." Green nodded. "Our scientists found a small device in orbit around Mars 3 days ago. We thought it was just space debris. That must have been how it started." "The question is, will they try again?" Dr. Ross asked. "Almost certainly," Wright replied. "But now we know how to fight them, and we'll warn Earth about what happened here." The Endurance had suffered significant damage. Many systems would need extensive repairs before they could leave Mars. But they had succeeded in their mission. They had protected the people of Mars colony. 2 weeks later, Wright stood on the bridge of the repaired Endurance. Mars grew smaller on the view screen as they headed back to Earth. The ship had been scheduled for decommissioning, deemed too old and outdated to be useful. But it had proven its worth when it mattered most. Earth Command had already sent newer ships to patrol the Mars sector, looking for any sign of the alien vessel returning. The technology recovered from the destroyed transmitter was being studied to develop better defenses. "Course for Earth locked in, sir," Navigator White reported. Wright nodded, looking around at his crew. They had faced an unknown enemy, and won. The galaxy might have moved on from ships like the Endurance, but when the moment of truth came, it had stayed true to its mission. "Take us home," Wright said. "We have an important report to deliver." As the old ship accelerated toward Earth, its worn engines humming steadily, Wright knew that the Endurance had earned its name one last time. And whatever the galaxy might bring next, humanity would be ready.